Hey guys, welcome to GNG's Tuesday 11 a.m. prayer time. My name is JD and I'm excited to have this opportunity to spend some time in prayer with you and to connect with you as we come before God in prayer and as we grow together through this time. It's something that I think is so important for us as a church and as a family that we gather together in prayer, whether that's together physically or together at the same time online or at different times throughout the week, but sharing the same mindset in prayer. The reality is it's important however we engage in this. And so thank you so much to all of you who participate on this on a weekly basis. We're deeply grateful for your involvement and for the prayers that you pray, because we know that we can all grow and be stronger and be better in our faith through prayer. And so first off, let me say thank you for your patience with us this morning. We had some technical challenges that prevented us from starting right at 11 o'clock, but I'm grateful to be able to have a team that that works through those challenges and gets us up and running today. So thank you for being patient, though. Grateful to be even able to produce this time today, because we weren't sure it was going to work today. So thank you for being with us on that, and sorry for the wait. But as we do every week, one of the things that we like in this time is to rehash and rethink and reconsider the things that we spent time on Sunday learning about. And on this past Sunday, we're continuing with a series we're calling The Truth About Marriage and Family. And in this series, we're really examining the different roles of the different family members. And so we worked our way through husbands and wives and parents. And now we're examining, this past Sunday, we examined the role of children in the family. What is the role of a child? And what we discovered by reading Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 3, is that the role of a child in a relationship with parents is really twofold. It's one, to obey parents, and two, to honor parents. Now, here's the reality. We live in a fallen world, and we live in a world where there are some bad parents, and we live in a world where some parents, as a result of their sin, do not place themselves in a situation where it is possible for Christian children to obey them. And in such situations, we all understand that our greatest responsibility in life is to obey God and to honor God, and our parents fall as secondary to that. That's a reality of our world, and we understand that. And so there are certain situations and there are certain people who are dealing with those situations that cannot in good conscience obey their parents or lie in an effort to bring honor to parents who are dishonorable. Okay? We understand that, right? That's reality. But in the vast majority of situations, especially among those who are part of churches, okay? Again, not all, but most. There is a requirement of God that we as children respect, obey, and honor our parents. In fact, this is so important to God that he gave it to us in the form of a command. In Exodus 20:12 or in Deuteronomy 5:16, it says, "Honor your father and mother as the Lord your God has commanded you, so that you may live long." And and there's these promises, right, that accompany that may live long and dwell in the land that the Lord your God is giving you, right? These ideas that there is a promise associated with the blessing of God, a promise of the blessing of God associated with the adherence to the command of God to honor and obey parents. So this is a running theme throughout the scriptures, that children are called to be, one, obedient, and two, honorable in their relationships with their parents, effectively bringing honor to their parents by how they act, how they speak, and how they engage in those relationships. And we spent a ton of time talking about that. But there was one real core reason why, and we dealt with this on Sunday. And the reason why it matters that we as children, and all of us are children of somebody, right? There's one reason why it matters that we do obedience and due honoring to our parents in those relationships. And that's because God, as God, sees our relationships with our parents as indicative of how we will react to Him. Right, in Scripture, what's clearly being commanded is that we honor our parents because they are the visible representatives of authority in our life. God has given authority to parents to run, oversee, and manage the home. And He has given them authority to enact leadership on behalf of the family, and children, as the submissive element in that family relationship, are called to obey. And the reason for that, as we've been seeing through the whole of the relationships that we've been discussing throughout this series, is that there are authority and submission structures in all aspects of the family. Husband, authority over wife, right? Parents, authority over children. God, authority over all. And that's so important because God has instituted these authority and submission relationships in all the various aspects of life. You think in church, in government, in life, in work, in sports, in all of it. There are authority and submission structures, and the reason for it is very simple. Every single one of those authority and submission relationships points back to the ultimate authority and submission relationship, God over us. And so as God views our relationships with our parents, he sees them as an excellent indicator as to whether or not we will be submissive and obedient and do honor to Him. And so what I want to do is I just want to think about the points that we made on Sunday as regarding our parents in the way that they cause us, so to speak, to interact with God. So what I want to do is I want to take the same points I made on Sunday, but instead of applying them to parents, I want to apply them to God. So on Sunday, what I said was that as children, we are called to obey and honor. And I said very specifically that we are called to obey in 4 very specific ways. We are called to obey immediately, cheerfully, humbly, and I'm sorry, I just totally forgot the last one. In advance, that's it. had a moment of like brain fog there. We are called to obey immediately, cheerfully, humbly, and in advance, and we're to do that for God as well as our parents. You see, when God gives us a command in Scripture, one of the things that we do as Christians on an almost daily basis, or we should, is we sit down with the Bible, right? And we read it. And out of that reading, we distill commands and principles that are to guide the way we live. And when we experience those realities, we are called to, in that moment, prepare to obey them. Obey them immediately. So sometimes when I'm reading the Scriptures, I'll be reading and I'll think about an area of my life where I am currently not in alignment with what the Scriptures have just taught me. Right? Maybe an aspect of my life that I'm out of whack, or an area of behavior that I need to confess because I'm experiencing conviction by reading the Scriptures. Whatever it may be, my immediate reaction to it has got to be to obey that immediately. So if I feel conviction, one of the things that I should do immediately is begin to pray and confess that area of my life that I'm out of whack. Or maybe I need to actually confess that to somebody else too, because maybe my actions have harmed somebody else. And the reading of the Scripture has convinced me that I need to confess that. Well, I need to immediately work to obey that conviction. Or maybe I read something and either Jesus or the Apostle Paul or Moses say, do this. I should immediately begin moving in the direction of doing that, because that's what it means to obey. When God gives me as a command, as a follower of His, I should be prepared to begin immediately obeying. So just as when a parent says, hey, go clean up your room, I should drop everything right now and go clean up my room because that's my responsibility as a child, right? Especially if I'm a young child living in my parents' home. But if I'm given a command, I should immediately go to do that. It's the same with God. It's the same with God. We should immediately begin to move, to cheerfully respond to that. And that's the second thing. We should cheerfully obey. When God points out something in my life that I need to obey, or I read the scriptures and there's something in there that I need to obey, I should begin cheerfully, having an attitude of cheerfulness in my attempt to do that. I should take that on with cheerfulness. That's a responsibility I have as a follower of Jesus. And guys, this is so important. What is our attitude of obedience to Jesus and to Christ and to God and to the Spirit living within us, right? What is my attitude toward obedience to God? Is it God gives me a command and my immediate reaction is to drag my feet or to complain or to say, no, not right now, or I'll get to it later, God. I don't want to do that right now. No. What is my attitude? My attitude should be that of cheerful obedience. Okay, God, that's what you want. You got it. Okay, God, that's what you're asking me. I am happy to do that today, right? Am I cheerfully obedient with God? Not just my parents, with God. Because here's the thing, if I can learn how to be cheerfully obedient to my parents, then I just might be cheerfully obedient to God. But if I can't learn how to do that with my parents, there's almost no chance I'll be cheerfully obedient with God. Now, again, there is some chance because we may have poor examples as parents, but we've come to truly know and understand and love and want to obey God. That's a real situation for a lot of people. But generally speaking, if I can't do it for my parents, then I'm probably not going to do it for God. Thirdly, the scriptures teach us to humbly obey. In other words, we don't have to be thrown a party every single time we do something that God asks us. We understand that all we've done is the minimum, not the maximum. All right, we obey humbly. I don't need God to laud me for every single thing I do that's in accordance with his will. I know that I'm responsible to do the things in accordance with his will, whether he ever acknowledges it or not. Because it's the minimum. It's just the minimum. Going above and beyond is not just doing what I'm told. Right? Just doing what I'm told is just doing what I'm told. Obedience is just meeting the minimum requirement, and we've got to think about it that way. All right? So when I do something out of obedience to God, whether that's witness to a friend, or give a financial gift, or pray, or go to church, or do a kindness to somebody else in my neighborhood, or whatever you might think of. Think of that not as, well, I really went above and beyond today. Think of it as, I was basically an average Christian today. You see, we like to think of our good deeds as stacking up evidence of our goodness, right? That's not what it is. When we do good deeds on behalf of God or his church or the world and the people in it, when we do that, we are simply accomplishing the minimum level requirement for Christians. We're not stacking up good deeds that will eventually be cashed in on. That's not how this works. We are simply obeying. The fourth thing we talked about was as often as we can, we should obey our parents in advance. In other words, learn their expectations and do it without having to be asked. And we should bring that same attitude into our relationship with God, where we are the kind of people who want to learn his commands, right? Want to understand his expectations, read his words so that we are clear on those things, and then do them without having to be convicted of our wrongdoing in those areas. Now, guys, none of us is going to be perfect on this, and we know that. And so that's an impossible standard. But to the best of our ability, we should want to learn God's commands, and we should want to learn God's expectations so that we can do them without having to be prompted all the time. We just make them habits in our life. But the second thing that we talked about on Sunday was, how do we honor our parents? And we talked about four things. We honor our parents by protecting their reputation, by how we behave and speak. Secondly, we talked about seeking their advice. Thirdly, we talked about showing them grace. And fourthly, we talked about providing them our personal and financial support. Now, there's two of these things that apply to our relationships with God specifically, and then there's two that are kind of more difficult to apply. The first is to protect their to protect their reputation. That's an obvious one-to-one corollary. We can protect God's reputation in the world just as clearly as we can protect our parents' reputation. You see, similarly, as parents can